Salve, my name is Ron Falconi and I'm the host of Meet Your Neighbor. I'm a regular citizen of Brunswick here who just had this idea where I wanted to invite some of my friends, neighbors, local celebrities to come down to the studios here in Brunswick and just talk to them and hopefully introduce them to you, all of you who are watching here in Brunswick, Brunswick Hills, and even on the internet. We have a very special guest today. He is the Vice Mayor of the City of Brunswick, and he's also the Councilman from Ward 3. His name is Joe Delsanter. Joe, welcome.
Ron, it's a pleasure to be here.
Hey, thanks for coming down.
Well, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to finally get a chance to sit and have a nice conversation with you and outside of our normal work environment.
Sure. Yeah. Joe, can you tell us something about yourself?
Sure. I'm turned that ripe young age of 50 just recently.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. I'm just a normal guy. I'm just a regular guy who operates a small marketing company that I started a couple of years ago. Okay. It's called Car Marketing. Okay. What we do is we set up marketing programs for the auto dealer industry. But what we do that's actually of value to the community is that we've tied it to helping schools and nonprofits to raise funds. It's a unique way for the businesses to actually bond with the community, which has a huge advertising benefit to them, as well as attracting customers that don't typically come into their store to find out about their services. And at the same time, typically we're helping athletes help offset the cost of pay to participate.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And it's a great program, and that's what I've been doing, and of course, that falls in between the political world that my responsibilities here in the city as Vice Mayor.
Yeah. Joe, where do you live here in the city of Brunswick?
I live on Magnolia Drive. It's an easiest house to find. I tell everybody it's the house right across from the entrance to Memorial Elementary School.
And how long have you lived there?
Well, we've been there since 1994.
Oh, okay.
I've been in Medina County now for 19 years.
Wow, okay.
Actually, I've had the good fortune of living in Wadsworth, Medina, as well as Brunswick.
So all the big three cities then?
Yeah. It's a benefit because you get to know what Medina County is all about.
Sure. And
how Brunswick fits into the Medina County equation, how important it is to this county and to the region. Brunswick's a wonderful city. It's a great city. I'm very proud of this community. I'm very proud of the progress it's making.
Oh, yes.
We have a great challenge ahead of us to continue making Brunswick a premier community in Northeast Ohio.
Absolutely.
Actually, to get the people who don't know Brunswick to be the true believers that all the Brunswick residents already know, yes. is one of those goals that I think we've been efforting to try and achieve over the last 5 years.
Yeah. Joe, you mentioned that we lived at that address on Magnolia. Who else lives with you there?
Well, my wife Beth.
Okay.
And our 3 children. My son Christopher, who is now 18 and graduating, okay. And also my daughters Allison, who is going to be 15 next month. I don't want to push her back, and my daughter Shannon, who's 13.
Okay. Joe, how long have you been a councilman now?
I became a councilman through an appointment and vacancy on council 5 years ago.
Okay.
And I was serving for 6 months and had the honor and pleasure of having to run my very first campaign. Wow. As a write-in candidate.
Oh, that's right. I know that running as a write-in is very difficult. But I know that you were able to overcome that, weren't you?
Well, with a sales and marketing background, it helps a little bit to understand how you're going to have to organize that type of campaign. And yes, it is difficult. In fact, my understanding is it was the first in Medina County.
It's the only one you're the only one that I can remember that's ever ran and won as a write-in. I know that even running a campaign just generally is very difficult, but you're able to do it as a write-in.
Well, anybody who learned how to spell the name Delsanter, obviously those folks are of higher intelligence, and considering the fact that I had the highest vote count, I would have to say that Ward 3 is doing well.
So, Joe, you're the councilman for Ward 3. Can you describe for our viewers, where is Ward 3 in Brunswick?
Well, Ward 3 is actually the northwest part of the city. Right? Okay. If you take a pen and start at the corner of Pearl and Boston Road, okay, and traverse that line across Boston Road till you get to North Carpenter, okay, and then travel south until you reach Grafton Road, the north side of Grafton Road back to Hadcock. Okay. Once you get to Hadcock, the western side of Hadcock all the way down to Minor Road, and on the north side of Minor Road, splitting the street all the way back to Pearl and then back up. So basically, we're predominantly the residential area. Okay. Very little business in that area on the Pearl Road corridor. St. Ambrose Church is there. Yes. And Brunswick Reformed Church, which encompass pretty much the religious community in that area. Yes. And that's it. That's the neighborhoods.
Okay. Joe, how did you get involved in politics?
Well, I could say I started as a 5th grade student council representative, which is exactly when I began my first campaign. In wow. Those days, in my school, where I was going to school at a place called in Bedford Heights, at a place called Heskett Junior High, and the grades representatives were the 4 clustered classrooms. Okay. They had a vote on you. So okay. I won my first election in 5th grade. I got involved actually in 7th grade. I was okay. When we moved to South Euclid, the mayor was running for election, Arnold D'Amico, okay. And I did what most of everybody else in that age does. We walked the streets and handed out a lot of door information, handouts. Yeah. And we did that, and of course we basked in the enjoyment that he won his election.
That's great.
Yeah, it was.
Can you further explain your political background?
Well, you know, we operate as a nonpartisan community here, yes. So we really don't have the need to express what our sure. Political preferences are, okay. And that actually operates well for this community. Okay. Of course, I've always been, you know, I've always voted Republican because that was the way I've always felt most comfortable with my sure. my values. Okay. And interestingly enough, it wasn't through family imposition. It was actually my conscious choice. I suppose it might have had a lot to do with coming out of the Vietnam War and that era that I lived in, okay. And looking at the world in that way. But it was also because I always had the belief that we need to be more responsible to ourselves, and yes. not asking government to always be our caretaker. Yeah, you know, I mean, government's there to enforce and to legislation and to sure. guide the community. Government also shouldn't be a burden on community.
That's true.
Typically that happens a lot when you start imposing on some of the more personal value issues yeah. within the community, you know, that people okay. Should hold dear to themselves.
Joe, last year we had our former Vice Mayor, Gary Warner, on the show, and he kind of explained what a Vice Mayor does. I was wondering if you can refresh our memories as to what people know what a commissioner does and maybe what a judge does, but people don't know exactly what a Vice Mayor does. Can you explain that?
Yeah, well, I could, and probably not as efficiently as Gary always did. You know, the Vice Mayor's responsibility, Vice Mayor, we are a council manager mayor form of government. Okay. Effectively then the council, which is the legislative branch of city government, is the head of city government, and of course the city manager works at the will of council. Okay. The role of Vice Mayor acts as the president of council. Okay. That person is elected by the council members. Okay. They're responsible for creating the membership of each committee, assigning the leadership of each committee, managing the agenda for the council meeting, the committee of the whole meetings, which we do. Also,
hold on. Can you differentiate between a committee of the whole meeting and a council meeting?
Oh, sure. Committee of the whole, which is the agenda items that all of council will discuss. Each committee, whether it's finance, service and utilities, safety, or Parks and Rec, each one of those committees address those issues that are specifically pertaining to their committee assigned responsibilities. On occasion, there's an overlap. Okay. Sometimes the mayor, the vice mayor will have to make a decision as whether or not it will stay in a committee or have to be discussed by the committee of the whole. Typically, that will have to do with issues that more of a citywide consensus needs to be made, and therefore all the council will have the responsibility of discussing it or have the pleasure of discussing it. Interestingly enough, it doesn't really matter whether it's in a committee, or eventually it has to, all of council will have the ability to vote on it and discuss it. So it's not exclusive by committee. It's just, for efficiency purposes, it's better to always have certain things at the committee of the whole level. Oh, yeah. So, the responsibility falls on that, and to ensure that those meetings go efficiently and effectively.
Okay. Joe, how long have you been the vice mayor now?
Since January of this year. Well, no, I take that back. It was actually the beginning of February by the time council actually got around to finishing the voting process.
Mr. Vice Mayor, what are some of the important issues that you see facing the city at this point in time?
Well, there's no question that the first issue that is important to us is the budget. Okay. And the funding needs of the city. Brunswick is the 10th largest suburb in the greater Cleveland area. People may not realize that, because those that are not in Brunswick don't always understand that Brunswick isn't a rural community. It's a true suburb and one of the largest. It operates at near $50 million budget. It takes a great deal of management to be able to do that efficiently. Okay. But even though that's the case, the funding situation has not grown with the pace of the growth of the city. Okay. So the idea is so the challenge right now before council is the fact that we need to be honest with ourselves, and we need to recognize that even if we tried our best to continue to streamline and be efficient, well, we're still faced with the fact that we have not changed our revenue base in almost 15 years. And it's the investment in the city that will continue to create, and maintain the great suburb of Brunswick that we are. So that is the number one issue right now. I think that coupled with that, of course, is the effort to create an economic growth pattern that will pull more dollars into the community. Sure. Right now, Brunswick's residents, over 65% of them, leave the city every day and go to work someplace else. That means we're sharing tax dollars with other communities. At the same time, we want to infuse tax revenue from sources other than residential. So that means economic growth. And the effort that has been going on since well, in the last 5 years that I have been on council, has been to peak up that process and market this community for what it is, a great community to do business in, along with being a great community to live in.
Yeah. Joe, I was wondering, which committees on council are you on?
Right now I'm chairman of the Parks and Rec Committee.
Okay.
I'm also a member of the Economic Development Committee, and I'm a member of the Safety committee.
Okay.
Safety and environmental.
Joe, I heard that you like to cook, and we've had this conversation over the years. How did that come about?
You know, I think it comes from just the natural desire from me to enjoy things like I enjoy the arts.
Okay.
Okay, and cooking is an art.
How long have you been cooking?
Well, it started out like anybody else. It was survival. So I've been cooking since I was in college at 18. So,
oh, wow, okay.
Although my dorm monitors didn't like the fact that there was cooking going on in my room. But we had an understanding. As long as I fed them well, it was okay. I've always, you know, I think you know, because I come from a background where cooking was the way families got together.
Okay.
It's a tradition for me. It's also something I like to do because I like to put a smile on other people's faces, and I think they always say one of the best ways to anybody is through their stomach. So cooking is just a way of expressing. And the interesting thing is, it's the best time I have is when I do something that turns out well from nothing.
Oh.
You know, it's when you fish through the spice racks and grab a few items out of the crisper, and you start putting them together with something, and it turns into something that, you know, raises an eyebrow at least.
Any particular kind of food that you enjoy doing, or just you just like experimenting?
Well, I don't call it trial and error experimenting. Yeah, actually no. You know, the reason is I grew up in 3 different communities. Okay. And the good thing about growing up in 3 different communities, I was exposed to many different cultural lifestyles. And
when you say 3 different communities, what communities?
Well, you know, I was born in the Collinwood neighborhood of Cleveland.
Okay, for a minute there, I thought you were talking maybe Wadsworth, Medina,
well, no.
Brunswick.
But you gain relationships and friendships throughout
Sure.
your life. Everybody does. You know, I grew up in Collinwood, which was an Italian neighborhood. Okay. And of course, you know, it was always Sundays with Grandma and homemade pastas and homemade sausage and everything else. And then when we moved, you know, of course, we lived in Bedford Heights till I was about 12, and then we moved to, which was pretty much a blend of folks from Appalachia and Pennsylvania, okay, as well as people moving out of the suburbs of Cleveland. So it was great to get a different taste of different foods, from down home cooking and southern fried chicken to, you know, just again, you know, Chinese food. And then moving into South Euclid, I lived in a predominantly Jewish neighborhood. Oh, wow. And I got a good handle on a lot of kosher cooking. And it really gave you a chance to experience a lot of different lifestyles. And I think everybody's got some place they go as far as what they like. For me, this is a way of finding out about people. Oh, yeah. Because in most cases, food was created, some of the greatest dishes were actually created by peasants because of need. They had limited material means to work with, and basically minimum foodstuffs to work with, and you had to make it interesting. Yeah, so you tried your best.
Any particular ethnic brand of food that you favor, or?
Well, someone gave me these great little Filipino egg rolls that were pretty good. I'm not sure where I got them from again, but you know, they weren't bad. They weren't bad. I mean, if you're trying to get me to say, do I like Italian?
Or any type of food.
Mexican,
Italian, or?
I'm very fond of, I really am fond of so many different kinds of foods. Okay. I have a real strong affinity for some of the, you know, South Asian cuisines, okay, Thai, and Cambodian, Vietnamese, Indian. I also, you know, you can't not love Italian food. Italian food is spread, you know, because the country is, it differs from the north to the south, so you have this great pleasure of not only the mainland food, but the seafoods that go with it, and you certainly, and the Italians may not have invented everything, but they knew how to make it more interesting in some cases. Oh. So you know, there's definitely some a matter of choices and varieties, but again, you know, like I said, I enjoy pretty much anything, but and I'm willing to try most things once.
Joe, what are some of the things that you like to do for fun?
Okay, well, play golf.
Okay.
Oddly enough, I'm an outdoorsman. I mean, I do love the outdoors. I've had the good fortune of have been to many of the great national parks in our country.
Do you like to camp?
Yeah, mostly primitively though.
Oh, okay.
Of course, I haven't done it in in a few years, unfortunately, because life has thrown you in a different place. But I've climbed mountains.
Wow.
And I've hiked into the Grand Canyon, whitewatered down the Colorado. I've whitewatered.
Wow.
I used to be an avid, well, they call it spelunking, if anybody doesn't know what that is.
No, what is that?
Cave diving.
Oh, geez.
Which is really exploring uncharted caves.
Oh.
And used to go to places out in Pennsylvania a lot, and actually...
Any particular caves that you...
Laurel Caverns was one of them. They have a commercial part of the cave, but they have a very large, extensive vein of cave that is non-commercial. So therefore, when you enter into it, you're in blackness, and you have to use your own lighting, and of course...
When you said cave diving, I thought maybe there was water in there and that you would dive in.
No, but I have dove.
Oh,
I used to dive. Yes, I used to dive off when I was younger. I've had quite of an event. You know, I've always managed to try a few things. You know,
that's interesting.
If you try things, if you always look to try something new, it keeps your mind open and fresh, and it also gives you an appreciation for what others appreciate.
Oh, definitely.
That's important.
Joe, for all my guests that come here on my show, I like to play a game called Fill in the Blank. Okay? First question, when I was a child, I blank.
When I was a child, I kept trying to kill myself. I mean, I tried all kinds of crazy ways to do adventurous things.
Cave diving? Or?
Well, that happened a little bit older, but you know, I was the typical, I think I was the typical, if you've ever seen the movie Stand By Me, the boys who ventured along the railroad track in the 1960s, of course, looking for the dead body. That was me. That was my life. The combination Sandlot and Stand By Me. Sure, we didn't have the fears that kids are faced with today. Yeah. Due to the unfortunate nature of the environment we live in today. We were far more adventurous, so we did a lot of stuff. We loved to play Army in the woods, go sled riding down uncharted hills, and actually walked along railroad tracks and played in the creeks and looking for crawdads, if you know what those are. They're crayfish.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was the life I led. It was good life.
Joe, the best advice I ever received was blank.
Well, it was funny because I think one of the best advices I ever got was how an outlook on life, and it actually didn't come from any one person. It was through my classes in British literature. Oh. Read an essay by Robert Louis Stevenson entitled El Dorado. Okay. And in it, he wrote that an aspiration is a joy forever. Oh. Simply meaning that it's the journey that is the greatest gratification to reaching a goal. Once you've reached it, it's the journey that you look back on that gives you the pleasure of reaching that goal. And I think that what it means also is that you endeavor to achieve goals, but once you've achieved it, in order to keep life full, you have to find new goals to endeavor. That's what it is.
The journey's there. When I retire, I blank.
Well, that'll never happen.
Okay.
I don't plan on it. I don't see retirement as an option.
Okay.
Monetarily, it might be, but you got to keep doing things. That's what gives longevity.
Sure.
I think I'll retire about 2 seconds before I die, and if I don't have warning, then I'm probably not going to retire at all.
Mr. Vice Mayor, can you give any neighborly advice to our viewers out there in Brunswick, Brunswick Hills, and those watching on the internet?
Well, Yeah, there's always some good neighborly advice. One of the things that I, especially with interacting with all the residents, going to the different meetings, people are always looking for information. Okay, in order to help make their decision. And of course they look to us. And we make a great effort to try and get out into the neighborhoods and the public at many of the, at every opportunity. And sometimes, of course, it's at the sacrifice of personal time with your families. So the best thing I can say is one, to look out for each other.
Sure.
The neighbors, especially those who are single, seniors who are alone.
Yes.
To make sure that they're doing okay. And two, the city offers so many great ways to get the information they're usually asking for, from our website to shows like this, to a simple phone call to your councilman. If you make the effort, you won't assume anything is as it is. You'll
Yes.
get a better answer and make an informed decision. I think that's the best thing I can ask from residents around Brunswick.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Joe Delsanter, Vice Mayor and Councilman from Ward 3. Thanks for coming down to the studios today.
It's a pleasure to have been here. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. My name is Ron Falconi. I am the host of Meet Your Neighbor. Regular citizen of Brunswick here who lives here in the Fairways with my wife and my 2 kids, and I just wanted to thank the Vice Mayor, Joe Delsanter, for coming down to the studios today. What can I say? I am Ron Falconi. I'm the host of Meet Your Neighbor, and I just want to say thank you and arrivederci.